I imagine many of you have been involved in smart grid for some time now, and you've had experiences that are probably deeper in your specific countries than anyone else in this room. Now, I have a unique and somewhat different perspective in that I've worked on smart grid projects around the world with many different companies, and I want to talk a little bit about some of those unique regulatory environments and unique situations that these utilities are in. And the reason I want to do that is because I truly believe that only by understanding our differences can we really appreciate the similarities that we all face. So first of all, let me talk about North America for a moment. One of our customers in North America, utility called Hydro One in Ontario, Canada. And in Canada, they have one of the highest energy consumption per capita in the world. They consume 9,825 watts on average, which is a little bit more than in the US, which is 9,500 watts. And in Canada, Hydro One was faced with a situation where they're retiring all of their coal-fired power plants. They're refreshing all of their nuclear plants. And there's a massive increase in the peak demand in Ontario. And so the government instituted mandatory time-of-use pricing for all consumers in Ontario. A very strong regulatory mandate that drove Hydro One and other utilities in Ontario to act, to deploy smart metering, to allow distributed generation, a very high feed-in rate for solar, rooftop solar, both for residential and commercial. They created this culture of conservation that has totally transformed the energy industry in Ontario. Now, going across the Atlantic to the UK, British Gas, the biggest energy retailer in the UK, has about 15 million customers, but they're totally different. The energy consumption in the UK is about half of what it is in Canada. It's about 4,300 watts on average. And it's a highly competitive, dynamic, deregulated retail environment. Now, they happen to own the meters in that case, so a very unique regulatory environment. They deploy smart meters, and what they think about is not energy efficiency. They're not particularly interested in outage management. You know, they're not interested in distribution grids. They're interested in providing unique services to their customers. They're interested in further engaging with their customers so they can offer home security systems or home energy management systems. British Gas makes more than half of their profits on home maintenance contracts versus selling electricity. It's a totally different perspective. They wake up every day not thinking about outages, but thinking about how many customers switched to my competitors yesterday and how many customers switched to me. Now contrast that with the TNB presentation that some of you may have seen from earlier today, titled Journey Towards Zero Face-to-Face. British Gas is excited to have their people sitting for an hour with their customers talking about home energy management, home security system. Totally different perspective. And finally, the Philippines. So Meralco, as many people from the Philippines here today, average energy consumption of about 578 watts. So that's nearly 20 times less per capita energy consumption than Hydro One in Ontario. But similar to British Gas in that they're trying to offer prepayment services, new services to their customers, new and unique ways to engage with the customers in the Philippines. Very, very unique and different perspective than some of those others. Talking a little bit earlier about Finland, where they didn't have a regulatory mandate for smart metering. They didn't need one because they had a mandate to provide high reliability. They could justify a smart meter deployment just from better outage detection. Just that alone paid for the entire smart grid deployment. So different countries face different situations. In North America, it's largely driven by aging infrastructure. You know, the average age of a transformer is over 40 years in the United States. In Europe, it's driven by environmental regulations, carbon regulations, and the EU mandates around smart metering. And in Brazil, our experience is it's driven by both growing demand and high losses. And so each country has its own unique challenges around smart metering and its own unique opportunities and drivers for the business case. And this panel is to explore those unique opportunities and challenges. So let me pass the microphone here to WK. Please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing at Hong Kong.
Good afternoon. I'm WK Leung from Hong Kong Electric. Maybe I briefly introduce my company, Hong Kong Electric. Hong Kong Electric is founded in 1889. We have over 120 years of history in Hong Kong. We are one of the 2 investor-owned, vertically integrated power companies in Hong Kong. Whether we have a smart grid in Hong Kong, it's hard to say. The answer is yes and no. We have a sophisticated, state-of-the-art, highly automated control system for generation. We have a comprehensive SCADA system for network. We have been achieving a supply reliability of 99.999% since 1997. So from this perspective, whether we have a smart grid, I leave the answers to the 4. But is it good enough? There's a saying, there's no best but better. So there are areas that we can look for further improvement. One of the areas may be smart metering. But smart metering, it comes to, in Hong Kong context, it becomes an issue of stakeholder engagement. The biggest challenge I will see is the stakeholder engagement. Whether end customers will accept such smart metering concept, whether the government or the regulator will approve such project. What is the views of the green groups on this project? So maybe we can discuss a little more later works. Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you. And Mr. Hossain, maybe you could describe what you do and the situation of smart grid in your country.
I'll start with simple one example, so better to understand the situation. Smart grid, everywhere in the utility companies thinking about the smart grid, number 1. Maybe 2% utilities company implemented partially. 98% still they are thinking, but practically they already did 60%. These things are, the statement is not clear to everybody. Because the concept of the smart grid, even the utilities companies should have very clean and transparent. You have, as I told before also, very clean monitoring and controlling system you have. That's enough. And up to which level you have, that is you did one part. Further you have to go to the customer level. That he told them very nicely, he explained, this you have the smart meter, that is enough to maintain the customer. So for my place, I'm telling like more than 60% we have covered with this smart meter. I mean, very nice controlling with the customer. There is a lot of challenges there. I will discuss with the next session what the things to follow. Because our lesson that will be a good help for you who are starting the new one. But the things, who's supposed to start? I am not suggesting everyone to start the smart grid. Say for example, as I want to start it, if you have the small houses, with small items, with small furnitures, with small appliances, it looks very nice. You can rearrange very nicely. But if you have the Suntec Convention Center, if you have the Marina Bay Convention Center, it is very hard job for you to make attractive and lucrative. Because it is huge. So the country, the periphery of this area, their geographical locations, populations, and the actual the electrical network areas, if it is limited, definitely you should go for that. If you have this huge, like if you say that China, if you think about the India, you should think twice. Where and from when we started. Suggestion, I'll come to the next stage. Then they will not do this. Definitely they will do it. But how they will do it? Based on our experience, I'll come to the next session, I'll do it. We are implementing based on some special benefit. I'll give only simple one example with this one. The industrialist who has this bill monthly $100,000 to pay. Now, you do not have this smart meter and smart billing system. If you forget to collect the bill or to submit the bill, how much you have to pay per month, next month it will be like 200,000 pending. He paid 25,000. Another month, 300,000 pending. After 1 year, he is telling, I do not have the business, please forgive me all these things. This is the disadvantage for this area, the industrial development area, where the industrialist and the people are not following and no definite monitoring from your utilities company. That is the more suffering. I'll give many more practical scenario. And based on that, if you learn or if you earn something, we'll be very much benefited. So I'll come the next session. We have this one. I'll discuss in very elaborately and very nice way. Let's finish our introduction. So I'm actually from Abu Dhabi Electricity and Water Authority. I told you that 29 years over the experience in the generation, transmission, and distribution network. I'm operating like some billions dollars of project related to all these activities. Like as I told you, the storage energy, solar project, automation, smart grid, everything with us. So we'll come one after another. And I think you'll be benefited with our discussion. Thank you very much. Go for next session.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. On my left, Mr. Yu from State Grid Corporation of China, the China Electric Power Research Institute. So Mr. Yu, if you could introduce yourself and also talk a little bit about where the state of the smart grid in China, please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, thank you, Chairman. I'm from China. In last 30 years, China's power demand and capacity has kept over 10% increase. At the end of the 2020, their amount will double. But the China load center is in the east coast of China, and the coal is in the north part, and the wind resource in the north part. The solar power is in the northwest, and the hydropower is in the southeast. So, how can we transfer the large amount of power for a long distance to the load center? It's very difficult. In 2009, China proposed the smart grid program. The definition of the strong and smart grid is based on the strong information and communication platform. With a UHV named as 1000 kilowatt AC and 800 kilowatt DC. We interconnect some power grid by the ultra high voltage tie lines. The goal of the smart grid is to build a smart nation, strong nation smart grid. It can be transfer large amount of power from conventional power and conventional and renewable source to the load center. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if you can get the sense that there are a few different perspectives on smart grid from the folks on the panel, and each of the panelists over the course of the past couple days, you've heard from other speakers at this conference. You've heard from other speakers at other conferences in the past as well. Heard about different perspectives on the smart grid. What I'd like to do next is have each of you comment on some of the things that you have been surprised about with other utilities, other perspectives that you've heard, and unique challenges or unique opportunities that you see in your particular area, your particular company, about the drivers for smart grid or the way smart grid will be rolled out or used or even thought about by the regulators. Let's start with you, WK.
In today's conference, I learned from some of the speakers that in some of the countries, for example, in Australia, the Victoria government mandates the implementation of this AMI and smart meter. So it is really a regulator drive project. It is quite different in other areas. For example, just mentioned by Rob, in Finland, they are driven by the reliability requirement. So in Hong Kong, we are regulated by a bilateral agreement called a scheme of control agreement with the government. Our returns are measured on fixed assets. So when we put forward any big project, we need to seek the approval from the government. If we are to put forward smart meters, there's always a concern that will we get the benefits from what we invest? So the approach that Hong Kong Electric try to meet this challenge, one of the way is to maybe start with a small-scale pilot project to test the feedback of the customers, to test the technologies. For example, last-mile communications technology. It is quite a unique challenge for Hong Kong situation. In Hong Kong, most people are working or living in high-rise buildings. All the meters are installed in a concrete room, meter room, whether it is a high-rise or underground. So how you get the meter communicate with the main communication network is a challenge. Whether it's a power line carrier, it is a mesh communication, it is a GSM network. It is very challenging. Unlike Western or other home in the US, where the meters are just installed outside your house, the communication is much more easier. So I think it is prudent as a responsible utility to test comprehensively before launching in full scale. So I think it is our way to meet the challenge.
Great. All right, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. A very high reliability on your grid creates a unique situation, in that there probably aren't a lot of benefits from outage in your territory, outage management. And with high-rise buildings, that's definitely a unique communications challenge. You know, if I were to contrast that to one of the utilities I mentioned, Hydro One in Canada, they have an average of 9 customers per square mile. So I imagine you probably have an average of about 9 customers per square meter, because you go up so high. They're very, very different from a topology perspective, and also very different from an outage perspective. You know, they have some areas that they have to drive more than 10 hours to reach a point where there's an outage. So yeah, sounds like a very, very unique situation in Hong Kong. Okay, Mr. Hossain, you've thought about this as well. So what are some differences that you've seen with other utilities, or unique things that you see in your circumstances?
The Hong Kong already did nice work. Actually, they have the good reference. Even the Australia. We find this smart grid implementation. Who is the pioneer in the world now at this moment? If we calculate from statistical data, we have to go to Italy and Spain. Let's see the Italy, how much consumer connected with the smart grid and what is the benefit and advantage. We'll go through the books and now we can get the statistics. They are the pioneer and the beginner for the smart grid. And they got some benefit. Follower of them, many countries came up. Now Australia is very fast moving. And same as the small country, they are also competing very highly to get the advantage and the benefit from this system. My suggestion and my challenges, when we start to implement the system, it is trial and error. What is the trial and error? The problem with the communication system. It is not like simply the fiber optical or the Wi-Fi system or WiMAX system. You have to decide and your standard how to communicate with your existing system. If your existing system is permitting, which communication and which standard you have to follow for the easy access and to maintain the standard, you have to think about that before implementing the smart grid technology. For Wi-Fi or GPRS, if the communication way, if you want to define or to separate where you can deal it, think about your existing system, what is there. Is it convertible or is it nicely communicate? Then go for this. We are challenging, we are facing the problem with this one. Finally, even the existing GPRS and Wi-Fi now match, but still there is a huge difference. So if you think about that, and from the beginning, before the project, it could be a good help instead of wasting your money. Number one. As I discuss another things, last time I told you, the country who's supposed to go for the smart grid. Really, even it looks not nice, still we should say, the smart grid, you are rich or you are financially incapable or incapability is immaterial. The authority, the utilities company, where there is a huge system loss, they don't have any other option except the smart grid. If there is a huge system loss is there. Now, clarifications. How and what's supposed to be. And it will be benefited for the company and authorities. We have many differences. We find some companies there at 40 to 60% system loss. 40 to 60% system, what remains for them? If the networks calculation they are getting 40 to 60% system loss and they are getting the revenue only 40%, then what remains with them? How much the government or the company can bear and support to sustain these areas? They do not have other option except smart grid. For example, India, if anybody there, maybe he will accept it now. It came down to only 17%, 17, out from the 60% to only 17%. Because of implementing, after huge investing the money to make it monitoring and control system under common SCADA system. There's an example. Now, you know very well, your utilities company, how is these circumstances? If your transmission loss still, if you're thinking that technical loss is still within the limit, that is another subject we'll suggest how to minimize. If you think about that, the pilferage, if that much I have, no option without the smart grid. Say for example, as I told, you have generation huge, you are supplying, end of the month you are getting collection only 40%. The pilferage are simply the stealing of the electricity or leakage of the electricity, a part of the technical losses. Only the way you can identify and you can rectify. This is the way to get it. Like, I'm giving this simple example, how we can implement it. I should not explain and go such a downstream, still to encourage you. You go for that. No option open for you. Like if you think about the China, if you think about the India, total world generation, how much they are generating? If I say it is the 1/3 or 1/4, still it is not wrong. Whole world, how much generating? How much this both countries generating? And if these areas, if this type of system loss is persisting still, definitely they cannot survive in future. Maybe after 10 years or 20 years it will collapse. As he told my friend, he told me, like the infrastructure for the Canadian and Americans, the problem is the aging now. If you go through the technical losses for the Canadian and for the American networks, we can compare to European grid, to African, to the Middle East. We are getting from Spain to Egypt, Egypt to Jordan, Jordan to Syria, Syria to Turkey, again covering the European countries. The system laws, we are talking about that. Are all the countries complying as per the requirement or the limit, the 4 to 6% for our transmission or system laws? If I say no, then what is the use for this interconnection for the grid? If you think about the American Canada, during the last time, due to the aging of the networks, that happened, the incident, it is network, it may happen. It is not surprising. It may happen. Not only the aging, lots of reasons are there why the disaster it's happened. It may happen for your networks also. Our suggestion, for our understanding, our knowledge and our experience, aging is not only the factor is the monitoring system and the controlling capabilities. If or otherwise oversight or it is neglected, it may cause this type of disaster. Otherwise, there is no option open for us. Anyway, now we are in good shape. We are doing this smart grid implementation. We have finished our Gen 2 up to the distribution, substation level. Now we are proceeding up to the customer level. We have, as I told, more than 60 to 70% customer already under EMI metering system, and rest of the things because of economical value is not like that much, return will be not there. So we are not taking in consideration at this moment, but it will be there in future. Really, it's a very, very big subject. If you have the many more questions, we'll answer one by one. I cannot close these things because it is huge. It is a huge subject. So if you have some question, if you want to discuss something, if you want to ask something, please go ahead for this one. We'll give the next session because a lot of things are there. Maybe you'll know many new ideas. Let's go ahead with this one. I'll close this my chapter at this moment. Thank you very much.